So this presentation is actually being recorded. So if anyone isn't excited about having themselves captured on this, bail out now and watch the recording later. So here we go. Greetings, everybody. My name is Jim Fuller. I am the Council Family FOS Chair for 2022. I've pulled this quick meeting together to get everyone oriented as far as some of the project and program elements of this year's FOS campaign. There are a few changes and differences from campaigns in the past. For one, we've got the opportunity to do presentations in person this year, recognizing there are still some units that are holding back, but certainly different than last year where everything was in fact virtual. We're a little bit back to normal again. So we've pulled together some resources to help you with presenting the FOS vision and getting families to engage. Of course, our primary objectives for the FOS program is to get families to participate financially in investing in scouting, particularly around two important areas. One is outreach. We really want to increase the number of youth that we are serving who have an opportunity to experience scouting. And when we have resources provided to us through FOS, we can extend that reach and hopefully increase the number of youth that are experiencing scouting. And the other is to be continually improving the resources and the programs of the council, which current scouts will have the opportunity to experience. In other words, have an even better scouting program as we go forward. So let's talk about how we actually engage around FOS. Hopefully, most of you have seen the online version of this brochure that we have developed for doing an FOS presentation. That is available now at the Scout office. Your DEs will be making that available to you. You should have also had access to a document that we call the script. You'll note that this really isn't a script at all. It's more of an outline of how the presentation flows and some major points that we really want to have highlighted while we're doing it. I have seen FOS presentations done as the presenter reads a script, and it's never great. And I don't think that we get very good results from it. When you make the presentation your own, and put things in your own words, kind of following a general outline, it always seems to go better. Now, the outline for the presentation is in fact this brochure. So following the bouncing ball is going to keep you organized and moving forward, and covering the different aspects of what we think. Now, I'll tell you that a few great marketing minds spent a tremendous amount of time parsing down what actually goes into this brochure. It used to contain massive amounts of information. We've boiled it down to what's really necessary to get people to consider investing in the future of scouting. Because while Friends of Scouting has a financial impact on the council, it is in essence really a marketing and sales activity. We are really trying to convince people about the value of investing in the future of scouting. So getting them to see what that future looks like is the key to the presentation and encourages them to, in fact, participate. So let's dive into a little bit of detail here. So here's what we're going to address tonight. Some of the timing associated with Friends of Scouting. We're going to step through the brochure in a little bit of detail to make sure that you've got a good vision of how this plays into the presentation that you're going to create. What the FOS recognition items are for this year for families that are participating, the paperwork process, because this is a scouting organization and the work isn't done until the paperwork is completed. There will always be paperwork. Last up, as far as the main part of this, is the volunteer recognition, because many of you will be dealing with units that have an internal FOS coordinator inside the unit. And we want to be able to recognize them for their contribution to the program as well. And finally, we'll deal with questions and answers. You come up with the questions, and Jose and Eric and I will try to come up with the answers that you may have associated with some of the nitty details associated with implementing the FOS program this year. So let's get into some of the details. Let's talk about FOS timing. If it feels like we're having this conversation a little bit later than normal, you would not be wrong. This fall was a challenging one for the council. If you're not familiar with the details, National had some significant issues with the registration process this year, which essentially created an all hands on deck reaction and response at the council level. Because quite frankly, you can't go to a unit to talk about FOS if they're not a unit because they haven't registered. So it was really a matter of setting some priorities and making sure that we didn't lose units, that we didn't use youth, that we actually got everybody registered. And that really took up the vast majority of the fourth quarter to get that over the goal line. From what I saw, it looks like we retained a massive number of the units despite coming off of COVID. And it looks like most of that work is coming to a conclusion, but we are running later than we planned. There were certain activities that we had planned for presenter preparation, but the reemergence of the Omicron virus really kept us from getting together in person to do practice sessions. We're really just going to hope that next year we have the opportunity to spend a little bit more time getting ready for our FOS presentations. So things are running a little bit late. Wanted to let you know why. It's not because any of us have been napping or we don't think FOS is important. We just had a major fire drill that was all hands on deck to get the council through that specific barrier. So let us proceed. Some specific timing of when should we be doing FOS presentations. Now, for those of you that have done this before, one of the events that frequently gets targeted for Cub Scout packs would be a blue and gold dinner. Now, for those of you that have ever been a Cub leader at the pack or den level, I want you to reflect back on what happens at a blue and gold dinner. The answer is everything. There is cake contests, and there's dinner, and there's games, and every den does a skit, and there's awards. And what ends up happening is, if you're lucky, you get shoehorned in at the very end of the blue and gold dinner when all the siblings are screaming, parents want to take their kids home. It's the worst possible time to try doing an FOS presentation. So we are going to say blue and gold dinner, not. Find another pack meeting where you can attend, where the Cub Master is going to be looking for some things to fill out the evening. If you can get that good solid, 10 minutes in the evening where everyone's paying attention, your FOS presentation is going to go much better than the chaos represented by blue and gold dinners. Now, the reason that we've targeted blue and gold in the past is the concept that, well, that's when the parents are there. But if you think about your typical pack meeting, the parents are there. It's the nature of a pack. It's more of a family gathering than dropping off the kids. And the incremental time that we're going to have with families during a non-blue and gold dinner is well worth the planning. Far as Scouts BSA, we're absolutely recommending that we stay with the traditional approach of figuring out where their court of honor is. And it is the opposite scenario associated with Cub Scouts. With Scouts BSAs, there are a lot of kids that are either carpooled or simply being dropped off. Parents don't hang around for the Scout meeting. Where they do actually gather and are there long enough that you can do a presentation will be the court of honor. So pinging the units, figuring out where their court of honor is going to be the best practice for lining up with them. Venturing is always going to be a crapshoot, trying to figure out when you're going to have parents that are there together to try to do a presentation. So we've got no guidance on that. It's just a matter of trying to figure out when you can actually get them all together. And for some reason, there we go. Now, there is a forum site that has been circulated out to units and was also in the Scouter Weekly. Coming to this site gives you the opportunity to say, hey, we'd like to schedule our Friends of Scouting presentation. So we can gather who the primary contact is going to be, as well as some information on when recommended dates are. Will every unit fill this out? Absolutely not. But we're going to get a better picture of who's out there as far as primary contact for the units so that we can do a better job of engaging and trying to arrange all of the details associated with doing the presentation. So just a note on those presentations, ladies and gentlemen, a scout is helpful. And you may in fact be asked to make presentations at units that are not in your district, but in an adjacent district, because let's remember what the goal here is. While every district may have, while every district does have a goal that they're shooting for, in other words, what the DE thinks that their fair contribution is to making the overall goal, at the end of the day, it's all about the council really making its FOS goal. So it would be tragic to leave units skipped in an FOS presentation because a particular district was either busy that night, didn't have a presenter available, whatever the issue was. We need to extend and basically make sure that we're using our presenter resources wisely to achieve the council goal so that we have the FOS funds necessary to do recruiting and program improvement for 2022. Now, if this makes your head spin, hang on, because it really is going to be an adjacent district. If you are located down in the very southern reaches of the council, we're not going to ask you to come up to Santa Clara and do a presentation. It's going to be somewhere that is local and makes sense for you to go to, where it may in fact even be closer than some of the other presentations you're doing in your own district. So with a little travel, we think that we'll be able to do a great job of covering all the units and making sure that we maximize unit and family participation in the program. So this is a little bit different than last year, where we drew some really hard boundaries, or I should say a couple of years ago when we were doing actual presentations, where presenters were sort of locked into their own district. We are going to be sharing those resources and extending, so you may have an opportunity to go out and make some new scouting friends. So thank you for your understanding. If you get asked to do something which is outside of your normal turf, again, our objective is for the council to make its number. So with that, let's talk a little bit about the presentation. You may notice from the front cover of this that we have the theme Scouting Together. Now, this theme was actually picked during the summertime because that's kind of how long the run-up is for FOS. At that point in time, we were kind of planning on celebrating the fact that we were all going to be back together, that we were really seeing COVID-19 on the decline, and there was great hopefulness for the end of 2021 and rolling into 2022 that all of the units would be back in force and everyone was going to be back together as a unit. No one planned on Omicron. So we're kind of mostly sort of all together now. But certainly better than we have been in the past. So there's a couple of meetings associated with this theme. One was actually getting together post-COVID-19. The other is, if you look at how scouting reaches and affects our council and those families. There are very few programs like us that bring together individuals from different economic backgrounds, different locations, different religions, ethnicities, culture, ages. You just sort of look at the melting pot, which is our council. And it really is scouting together. And it's an opportunity for families to join an activity where their kids are going to continue to make friends that may be outside of their typical circle. So scouting is, in fact, one of the great gatherers of individuals of varied backgrounds. So it really is scouting together as a community, as a family, and across all different ways that you might chop up our local area. So rolling into this, obviously when you're doing your presentation, it's great if someone from the unit can introduce you. Of course, like I am this evening, you want to show up in uniform. And one of the things to really emphasize is the fact that you are, like them, a volunteer and out there to present to them the Friends of Scouting program and basically how they have an opportunity to participate. I will always prepare a 5x7 card, which is written up with kind of who I am, so that the person in the unit introducing me doesn't do a fumble and stumble, because it's not a great way to start the presentation. So you're basically setting them up for success. You get up there, you thank them for the opportunity and the time out of their meeting, because you're basically consuming it, and you roll into it. And if you look at how we have set this brochure up, given how short an FOS presentation is, there's no way you're dragging a projector and a screen out to do a PowerPoint presentation. It just makes no sense whatsoever. This brochure is your PowerPoint presentation. So we've designed it so it flows through the presentation itself in a very logical format, so that you can be holding this thing up and specifically directing the audience, each and every family that has a brochure, as to where you are and what you're talking about. So it's almost like hitting the clicker and flipping to the next slide. So we're really encouraging you to have one of these up at the front and sort of have it available and pointing to it just like you would a PowerPoint slide as you go through. Our first one, which is the major section associated with kicking this thing off and answering the question, why should my family make an investment in scouting? I mean, we're already paying PAC dues or scouting dues, and I'm paying to send my child off to summer camp, and we paid registration. Why should I make a further investment into scouting? And the answer is scouting works, and we've actually got research to back this up. And this is an opportunity to sort of cover the Tufts University study, as well as the other study that we have outlined here, which is Harris Interactive. It really is sort of the impact. But what I have found, and those of you that have done this before, what typically gets people's attention is your own personal story of how scouting works. When I go up there and do an FOS presentation, I talk about the fact that when I was a child, I was extraordinarily ill. I was out of school more than I was in school. I was the kid no one wanted to be friends with because I kept disappearing all the time. And it wasn't until I actually got enrolled in Cub Scouts that I had a group that I was able to work with, socialize, learn teamwork. Yeah, Little League was not a thing for me. That Little League tryouts was a complete disaster. So I learned teamwork and leadership and communication and problem solving and all of those great skills that you want to have as an adult growing up in scouting. It was absolutely formative and did as much for me as going to school. So when you tell that personal story, you really start talking about what the impact of scouting is and is they're malleable for a short period of time, and this is an opportunity to make sure that your investment is actually kind of working in the children. All right, I'm going to move to our next one so that when you flip this open, you're now on to the second panel, which really talks about the FOS program and what it's trying to do. And this is where we emphasize those two major objectives. One, we'd like to see more youth involved in scouting because scouting works. More youth in it is basically going to have an impact on what the world looks like when our children are rolling into their future. More scouts will probably have a greater impact than many other potential programs out there. So it's really imagining a future where all kids can experience scouting and how different a world it would be that our kids would inherit. So we're really talking about the fact that we're trying to reach out and increase the number of youth that our children have the opportunity to scout with. And by the way, when we've got more scouts, your youth today will have greater opportunities for learning and demonstrating leadership. Because if there's not enough scouts in a unit, how are they going to be a patrol leader? How are they going to be a senior patrol leader? We need units of size to give youth the opportunity to experience those leadership opportunities. And the other major factor for FOS is improving the quality of the program on a continuous basis for what your kids are going to be experiencing. This is an opportunity to highlight the fact that, when you send your kid to summer camp, what those fees are paying for is really food and program costs. You're basically putting on summer camp. Those camps need to be maintained. They need to be grown and expanded so that we can send more scouts there and have more exciting program available for it. This is one of the things that FOS funds, is the ongoing development of those camps, the development of programs so that your scouts today can in fact experience a more impactful scouting program. Rolling in further, what happens with some of these funds associated with Friends of Scouting? Well, you're basically helping to support 9,000 youth and to expand that reach, keeping up our camping facilities. And what's really interesting about this is that unlike a number of opportunities to invest in your giving dollars, 82% of the donations go directly to program support. You talk to any other fundraising organization, you will find that their actual program impact is significantly less. Now, you may get the question of what happens to the other 18%. I would remind families that we do in fact have a scout office and we need to keep the lights on. So, there is some overhead costs associated with having a council, but 82% of the donations are going to go directly to program support and to extending scouting's reach. We then roll into our call for participation. This is the pledge card. It is the last one, and I would encourage you to model behavior associated with this. And while you're talking about it, rip the card off, making sure that everyone had pens at the beginning, and talk about the process for filling it out. This is known as the presumptive close. You are assuming every family is going to want to participate. So lead them through the process of actually filling this out and answering any questions that they've got while you're actually doing this. Now, we've tried to reduce the complexity of the pledge card a bit. It used to be significantly more information that we were trying to gather. We've basically reduced it. It's got the same typical information that you'll find on it, which is critical, which is who the heck are you? How much is it that you would like to invest in scouting? How you would like that done? Whether you're going to give us cash or a check today, whether you'd like us to take your credit card number and do it, or if you'd like to do it electronically. You can see that we've not only given them a website, but we've given them an OCR. barcode as well that they can scan and go immediately to that. We're capturing information associated whether or not they've got matching, and if they do want us to bill them, whether it's one time, monthly, 2 or 4 installments, typical, how can we take money from you? So there's a number of ways of actually giving. Now, I would encourage you all to take that card, scan the OCR, and go to the website. It starts off looking like this. I didn't capture all the details in the screenshot. It actually scrolls for a bit. It works equally well if you're doing it on a phone, but you should become familiar with all the fields that are there. So if you get questions about, well, how do I do this or how do I do that? We don't lose momentum in the decision process to participate, because what we know is that people lead very busy lives. And as important as participating in the Friends of Scouting program is, we know that if they take this brochure home with the intention of giving later, we will see fewer families participating than if we can get them to engage in the meeting itself. So this is really all about creating and maintaining momentum, leading them through the pledge card process, gathering those things up, answering questions, and actually moving through the process. Now, some of you may have gotten the question in the past, and it's not unusual, of where does this FOS money go? I'd like a more detailed version. Well, if you look at the back of this, which is kind of the dead space on the brochure, you'll find that there is this particular information. And down at the bottom is just kind of an overall list of some of the areas where FOS has an impact associated with running the program, as well as the fact that we've got all our contact information there. And interestingly for families, it's fascinating to find out how many families join Cub Scouts with only the vaguest idea that there's a Scouts BSA program right behind it, as well as venturing in Sea Scouts and exploring. So here's the opportunity to sort of, if they want to know, well, my kid's only going to be in Cub Scouts for a couple of years, you're making an investment in their long-term scouting future. All right, I want to move on and talk about recognition. So assuming that you've gotten all these families to participate in the family FOS program, we need to talk about a significant change from previous years. In years past, if someone was a significant donor, and let's say they moved past level 1 to level 2 to level 3, say they were giving $1,000, and there were a couple of levels before that, what we would do is we would give them the FOS recognition item for level 1, level 2, and level 3, because we could. And, it sort of recognized continuous moving forward. We have a problem with that going forward. The IRS has a rule that says the recognition that you give someone for making a donation cannot exceed a specific percentage of the total donation. And if we were to give them the level 1, level 2, and level 3 recognition item, we would be violating IRS rules for keeping it clean, and we would have to report the family had received value beyond their donation, which would suddenly now be a taxable activity, plus all the overhead of the council having to report the fact that we were giving out items in excess of the IRS limit of recognition for making a tax-free donation. So the answer is we're not going to do that. We are going to shift to a different system where you're going to get the recognition item for your donation level. And if that's the top one, that's what you get. You don't get the recognition items leading up to that. And this is by IRS rule. This is nothing from the council at all. Let's put it this way, friends. We all think the BSA has already spent too much time in court. And we are not going to create a scenario where we have to make yet further appearance to explain ourselves in having given away items in excess of IRS rules. So please, let's all stick to the plan, and we'll be giving out items specific to that participation. So let's take a look at what it looks like this year. So for every family that participates, regardless at what level, they get the Scouting Together sticker. Now, the decal, the thing that we've typically done for families that choose to participate. Now, when they move to the $200 level, they get a shoulder patch, in other words, the CSP, as we call it, plus the first aid kit, which is also logoed with this. Now, if they move up to the $350 level, they still get the shoulder patch and they get the branded Nalgene bottle, but they do not get the first aid kit. Shoulder patch, bottle, period. $500 and above, shoulder patch and the pocket knife, which is a very lovely Scout-themed pocket knife. At $1,000 and above, they get the shoulder patch and a really nice wood laser engraved Friends of Scouting pen. This is a very nice piece. But again, they'll get the pen, but none of the ones leading up to it. Now, if they're considering making a contribution of $1,000 or more, this is probably the opportunity to have a conversation with them about exactly how to do that and the potential of engaging your DE who might engage some of the folks at the council office associated with major gifts and how to do that. So, and we're all hoping that everyone will give at that level, but we all know. Now, I do have some information for you. Because of supply chain issues associated with COVID and shipping delays, plus everyone was all hands on deck for the rechartering process, we regret that the recognition items, I think we've got the Nalgene bottles that have arrived, but the other recognition items are still a few weeks out. So we'll be doing presentations in February with a promise of things to come. We are chatting about how best to deliver those recognition items to the units. We may have commissioners involved, we may have presenters involved, we may have DEs involved. We're still talking about what's the best way to do a catch-up of getting the recognition items to the units. And we will certainly keep you informed and update the presentation kits as those items actually arrive. So let's talk about the FOS paperwork process, because as we know, you'll be gathering up a bunch of these cards and there'll be some forms to fill out, which is summary information. And we do know that the district family FOS chair and the district executives on a district by district basis have had some different ideas about how best to do it within their district, given geographic distance from the scout office, how large the geography is, their plans for working together. So we are not going to, from a council perspective, specify exactly how the paperwork process gets done and handled. That's going to be between the DE, the district FOS chair, and the presenters. So see your DE and your FOS chair on details of how to get materials and how best to get that paperwork done and turned back in. So we're not going to specify it. That's a conversation you need to have with your district team about how that's going to transact. What we can say is this: get your paperwork turned in ASAP. You don't want to be handling cash. Those cards that have credit card numbers on them, you don't want to be responsible for those things. Get those turned into the council office as rapidly as you can. I mean, you don't have to do a mad dash the next day, but please don't let that stuff linger at your house The council needs that so that they can be rolling on the FOS program. So get your paperwork in, regardless of the process that your team is going to use, as soon as you can. Now, for volunteer recognition, there's a number of different items. For one, we wanted to say thank you as an FOS presenter. We've got this really great, Jose came up with this really great patch for FOS presenter. It'll come with a loop so that you don't have to try to sew this on. You can hang on your pocket. If you're the district FOS chair, we have a specific patch for you as well. And when you're working with a unit that has an identified FOS unit coordinator, we'll have patches for you to give to them as well. We want to recognize, reward, and reinforce the local unit ownership for driving the FOS program in their unit. So we want to make sure that this is something that is recognized and driven as well. And if you're familiar with the program in the past, we do have the unit 100% participation ribbon, which is every family participates regardless of what level. If we get every family, the troop gets that ribbon for their unit flag. So we're going to move into the Q&A section. I know that you'll likely have a number of them. You'll see that on the quote unquote script, we've tried to cover some significant areas where we think we're going to get questions. We think that the hottest question that's going to come out is this: that a number of families are going to be aware of the fact that litigation has been brought against the Boy Scouts of America. We are in court. There is a bankruptcy proceeding, and there is a monetary settlement associated with that litigation. The question that we're likely going to field is going to be, will my FOS dollars go towards satisfying that settlement? Because a lot of families aren't going to be excited about having their dollars leave. And the answer is no, that the FOS dollars are going into a completely different account. The settlement associated with the litigation is coming from insurance, some contingency fees, and some other assets that the council is working with. The FOS dollars are going to stay here with the council and will be used to extend scouting's reach and to improve the program that your scouts experience. Those dollars are not leaving the council. So you'll see that there's some other Q&A in there associated with, this is tax deductible, how's it being used, and various. But let me just open it up for individuals that have questions about the overall objective, the presentation that we're laying out associated with engaging families, or process. Just hit us with your best shot.
Yeah, I got a question the other night regarding recognition gifts.
Yes.
And there are families that have kids both in packs and also in troops. And they're wondering if they can combine their donation to reach a certain level on their recognition gifts.
So in other words, they're going to make a pack FOS contribution and a troop FOS contribution.
Yeah.
Or
in order to get the 100% participation in both.
Sure. I don't see any reason why we can't roll up the donations into a family donation and give them the one recognition gift associated with that.
Okay. Now there's the opposite side.
Eric, Jose, do you see any difficulties in basically treating the family as a family, even though they're making multiple donations, as long as that donation, as long as the gift is commensurate with the donation and keeps us out of IRS territory?
Yes, absolutely, Jim. So that is a great question, Jim Kim. So just, just to clarify, parents and families are able to make a contribution and have that contribution go towards supporting the FOS goal for one or even two units if they have kids in both programs. So that is totally okay.
Okay, and then there's the opposite end where the person makes a donation, say to leadership, and then they make a donation to their troop. Do they have to combine those two contributions for one recognition gift, or can they take two different recognition gifts in that case?
Like you mean like two smaller items, right?
Well, suppose somebody gives like $500 for leadership and then $350 to support a scout in their troop.
Yep.
What happens in that case? How do we get into?
So the IRS rule is going to allow you to treat it separately as well, because the recognition gift will be commensurate with, as in your example, they'll get the $500, which is commensurate with a $500 donation, and they'll get the $350 recognition, which is commensurate with the $350.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
But you can't put them together, call it 850, and scale up the entire process.
Okay.
So you said that you don't have all the recognition gifts yet available, or we're not bringing the recognition gifts to the presentation? We're not giving them out at the presentation?
You will for later presentations. If you've got something scheduled for the first week in February, with our regrets, we're going to have to send you out without the recognition items, and we're still working on the best way to send those items to the unit afterwards.
Okay. So if we don't have anything scheduled, we should just wait until mid-February to schedule them, or later?
So Jose, timing associated with the arrival of the recognition items.
Yeah, absolutely. So unfortunately, we are waiting. As Jim mentioned, there are some items that have arrived at the office. We're still waiting for others to do so. We should be getting them in the next 4 to 5 weeks, hopefully. We will try to get them in as soon as possible. And once we get them, we will try to get them out to units for presentations and to all of our district executive teams.
So you're going to send the recognition items to the units or to us?
Well, working through the volunteers.
Okay.
To the units.
And the brochures, that was the other thing. Where are we getting all these brochures? Are you going to give them to
brochures
us,
are
or
available,
give them
and those are at the office. Absolutely.
So we need to pick them up and take them to the presentation. I mean, we're responsible for the presentation items, the brochures, and returning the brochures to the office. We have to coordinate all that.
So I would encourage everyone to collaborate with your district executives to get these items to the presentations. The brochures have been available for several weeks, and for a couple of presentations that have happened in the last couple of weeks, those have been presented at the presentations using Jim's method.
Hey, Rich, this is Doug. We always put together packages for.
Sorry, hang on just a second. Someone has a tremendous amount of background noise going on. So if there's a loud conversation going on in the room where you are, would you please put yourself on mute?
All right.
Thank you.
All right. So Rich, I was saying in Pioneer, we always put together a packet for each of the presenters to take to the presentations. Ideally, the package includes gifts, but if not, it'll include brochures or whatever else we need to bring out there. So we'll coordinate that with you just before your presentation.
All right. But if let's say we go to the presentation and we do better than we expect, and we exhaust all the recognition items, we have to give people a rain check saying we'll get back to you. We'll get it to you somehow later. So we need to make sure we know which ones we've given out, which ones we haven't, and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, we have a spreadsheet that we use that's really helpful if you bring a laptop to the presentation, where you can track the gifts and track the amount of money. So it's really helpful if you choose to use the spreadsheet that we have. But we'll walk you through that when you're ready to do the presentation.
Okay. Excellent. We've got a couple of hands that are electronically raised. Josh, let's take yours first, please.
Yes, good evening, Jim. Something that some people were asking me business-wise, I had a couple of parents. Where are they getting the IRS tax forms? They can use them as a deduction. Are they going to be mailed to them, or is that something going to happen electronically, or they're going to just get dinged at taxes time, saying that, we did donate this much? How's that going to happen? Especially going through tax season right now myself with our family. I'm still looking for mine from last year because I can definitely use it as a good deduction.
I'm going to have our scouting professional who's most familiar with the office talk about that. So either Eric or Jose.
Yes. Can you hear me, Jim?
Yes.
Hi. Yeah.
Oh, lost him.
And now we can't.
Yep. And then within a few weeks or so, there's a thank you for this amount. Boy Scouts of America, registered 501c3 with headquarters in San Jose, California. So it has the specific information on there. And then at the end of the year, December, there will be a thank you letter listing the amount of donation that you gave to the council. So there should be 2 items. And Josh, if you gave
Eric, you're dropping out. Heather, would you like to take that question?
Sure, I sure would. Sorry, Eric, you're cutting out on there. We do, if you missed a little bit of what Eric was saying, you do get a letter within about a month of your donation, just says thank you on there, and you can use that. And then at the end of the year, because we know you're going to make multiple donations to our council, you're going to get a comprehensive letter that says, here are all the gifts that you made to the council in that year. For example, our team is sending out those letters right now for 2021. So for the gentleman who mentioned his taxes right now, no need to dig. You'll be getting a comprehensive letter from the council for your gifts in 2021. I hope that helps.
So is that from here out? That's going to be the common practice we're going to be using for the FOS?
It's been our common practice for years. So anybody who makes a donation to Friends of Scouting, Clays, anything at all, endowment, whatever it is, James E. West, you make a donation to the council, you get a thank you letter from the council within about a month from us. And then you get an official letter at the very end of that year for your taxes for that year.
So that would be probably pretty important to put in our discussion then as we're doing our presentations, right?
Yeah, I think for most of our guests, I don't know how many folks itemize. Most of our gifts are in the under $300 category. But of course, we don't make that judgment on you. Everyone gets a letter. But for most folks, it hasn't been too much of an issue.
Thank you, young lady. You answered my question.
Thank you. Thanks for calling me young.
Thank you, Heather. Ken, is yours a continuation of the same topic or a different one?
Yeah, the only thing I wanted to add in is if they actually do an online donation or pledge, they will get an automatic receipt from that immediately. So that is like a third option, a third thing that will happen if they actually use the QR code and do it online. So I just wanted to add that in.
Perfect. Ken and Heather, can I ask you to put your hands down electronically because it's limiting the number of folks that I can see with their hands up. Thank you very much. All right, Will, I think you were next up in the queue.
Yeah, thank you. Just confirming about the recognition gifts. So sounds like, and this is something I haven't done before, but I need to be sitting there and take someone's card, look at the value, reach into the bag and go, oh, here you go. You now gave me $1,000. So here's the, right? That we have to have that kind of transactional thing in the meeting which seems a little kind of awkward. I don't know.
It may seem that way, but I will tell you that people are eager to have their recognition items.
Okay.
Particularly stickers and patches, because you know exactly where those are going. Those are handed over to the scouts.
Right. Okay. All right. Yeah. Just a little. Last time I did it,
typically
online,
after all the cards are accumulated, the meeting is continuing to go on, and you're basically going to invite folks, that if you made a investment in scouting that meets one of those giving levels, please come see me in the back. I've got a recognition item for you. So you're not continuing to drag this out through the middle of their meeting.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. That's a good idea. And then
Okay.
just one other thing, and I did an online, donation just recently, and the website's a little buggy. And I don't know if that was just me or if anybody else has had some, or if you got any feedback on the site having problems getting it to function.
Haven't heard anything, but I will go pound on that tomorrow and see if I can break it.
Okay.
The folks at the Scout office will tell you if it can be broken, I'll do it.
Okay. Great, thank you.
All right. Jeff, I believe you were next up.
Yeah, so one thing that's not jumping out at me is we usually have a target, it costs this much money for, for per scout, it's like a certain amount of money. Usually with that certain amount of money, there's like a donation gift, used to be a cup, but that didn't jump out at me in this presentation. You had the level of gifts, but what is the target overhead per scout that we think is it now? Is it 200, 275, 350? It didn't jump out at me in the brochure.
Okay, so if you look at the the pledge card itself, you'll find that it lists 200 as the one level. Then right next to it is $350, which we have called Support a Scout. So that's the actual number associated with what it costs to provide support to the scouting program and the council is $350. And if you look at the script, I do talk a bit about why we simply don't charge every family $350 per scout to participate. We don't want to create economic barriers. And families are financially blessed in different ways and at different levels, and we want to give families the opportunity to give till it makes them smile. Anything else, Jeff?
I'm good.
Okay, let me have you take your hand down, please, electronically. And Mr. Porter, looks like you're up.
Yeah, I was wondering if the council would have available any of the like credit card readers that you can plug into an iPad or anything that would help keep you from having to write a credit card number down on the card. Well,
the good news is you're not going to do the writing. The member of the family that's filling out this card is actually going to do it. And it does obviously create some security issues for some to have that information floating around, in which case you can encourage them just to pull out their phone and do it electronically. The council has looked at the concept of sending folks out with readers to do family FOS. And there are some aspects of the technology and the costs associated with doing it that make it rather unattractive for us. So it's something that we're continuing to look at as we go to the future, but until we wrangle a couple of the technology issues and swing a better deal with one of the providers associated with how big of a bite they think they want to take out of the FOS contributions, it will remain an online and pledge card topic for a while.
Okay. And are they still sending out the pre-printed white cards?
So that is a district by district decision as to whether or not you're going to basically have a label that goes on this pre-printed, or whether you're going to have families fill out the card from the beginning. So I'll send you specifically to your DE and district FOS chair.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. All right, our favorite fun guy, Bob Wittig.
Okay, I just have two comments. One comment is in terms of bugginess on the website. I'm not calling this bugginess, but there is one thing you may get asked about. There is a field on there that says pledge ID, and it says optional. That never has done anything for anybody. Just tell them ignore that. It may relate to somebody somewhere, but it doesn't really relate for anybody that is new to the system. So that's just a field we say, just ignore that one. Secondly, make sure that they do not forget to put in their district and their unit so that it gets credited to the correct unit. So that's just something to say to them when doing the online donation. All right, the next thing has to do, and this is through my many years of doing FOS presentations, the most important thing that I learned is that make sure that you stay for the entire evening. Do not give your talk and then say, thank you very much, and then walk out the door. Because you are walking away from many, many donations if you do that. Stay until the very last person walks out the door, because you show that you care, you show that it's important to you, you show that it's important to the council. So I cannot emphasize that enough. Stay all the way to the end. I always make sure I walk out when the person is turning off the lights. So that's all I got to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Excellent recommendation, because in fact, you may find that there are some folks that are slow to fill out the card, or because of the activities of the meeting, choose to do it after the meeting actually is concluded, and you'd miss an opportunity to pick up an FOS contribution simply because you dashed out the door. Thanks, Bob.
I get multiple. I get 2 to 3 to a half dozen as people are walking out the door at the very end. So.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much. I'm going to actually build that into next year's presenter's guide. Mike, thank you for your patience. You've been sort of at the caboose of the question asking process here. The floor is yours.
Yeah, I actually had a comment and a question. So my comment is regarding the kind of the transactional nature of handing out the gifts. One way I found that's useful to kind of sidestep that is if you have a really good unit FOS coordinator, you can kind of delegate the task of distributing the gifts to the FOS coordinator, so that because they're going to be the ones, especially if the gifts come later, right? They're the ones connected with the troop, and they are pack, and they can actually be responsible for making sure that everybody is getting their gifts. My question is, it kind of goes back to the earlier question about combining or splitting gifts. You know, we may have families that maybe they have like kids in scouting, and they decide they're going to give like $1,000, but they might want to get, let's just say they want to get 3 of the $300 recognition items instead of the $1,000 recognition item. Is that allowable under these new rules or not?
If they have 3 kids, or this is across 3 units, it could also be one spouse versus another spouse making a contribution. There's a number of ways of slicing and dicing this.
Would you recommend that they fill out 3 cards, or can they do it all on a single card?
That is an interesting question. I really don't have an answer for it because I didn't see that one coming, Mike.
Okay, that's fair.
You probably break systems. So I'll leave that to Eric and Jose to sort of field. They may actually need to come back with an answer on that one. So let us scratch our heads on that one, and we'll get back to you on how to proceed in that particular case. But thanks for bringing it up, because that wasn't on our radar screen.
No worries.
And Mr. Wayne Cunningham.
Hey, are you saying under these new rules that, for example, anybody that gives any money, they're going to get a sticker? Then if they give a little bit more, they're going to get the next item. They give a little bit more, they get the next item. You can't say that you get a sticker, you get the second item, you get the third item, because you've paid all of that up to that point. You're saying the new rules, you can't do that.
Right. You're going to get one recognition level only.
Even if it's just a sticker for being a supporter, you can't give that plus one other?
So anyone can have a sticker. It is of a cost which is inconsequential.
Okay.
So whatever they give beyond, $199 is the recognition gift that they're going to get. So if they give $350, they're going to get the $350 recognition item. They're not going to get the $200.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Any other questions for anyone that is out there? We're going once.
What's the latest that you would want us to do an FOS presentation? Like how if it's like June or something, you don't want us to wait that long, right?
We would like to be done by June, because frankly, we would like to be rolling up our sleeves and planning the 2023 FOS program. So nothing wrong with a March presentation. April is getting a little long on the tooth. May is probably the worst possible scenario you've got, because at that point in time, the Cub Scout school year is starting to come to a close. And there's going to be less excitement and momentum associated with making an investment in their Scouts program. It's completely a mental, emotional thing. So we really want to target to get started in February where we can. Main body ought to be March, tailing ought to be April, and by May, we've got to be done. So Heather has her hand up again.
I'm that girl, always sitting in the front row. Hey, Jim, I had a couple of questions about virtual presentations, and are we still doing those? Are we going to wait on those a little bit and encourage folks to go all in person? Do you want to talk about that? I just had a couple of questions about it.
So what we do know is that personal appeals are always more successful in person as opposed to doing it virtually. However, we recognize the fact that there may be some units that are still meeting virtually. If they are, we're just going to have to try to do it virtually itself. Now, the slides that I have used here this evening will be available to all presenters, and I'm actually working on a couple of additional ones as well that can be used to back up and reinforce a virtual FOS presentation. So rather than having the card in front of them, you'll still, like we had this evening, the picture of the different panels, and you can simply follow it through as part of the presentation itself. If we have to, we will resort to a virtual FOS presentation. Our preference is to do this in person because we know it has greater impact. Thanks for the question, Heather. Bowman, you've got a question for us. I'm going to try to bring us in because we've agreed to be done by 8 o'clock. We're a few minutes over. I want to take a few last questions and we will wrap. So Bowman, you're up.
All right, Jim. So actually, this is kind of in line with the different levels. Do we round up, round down, round down? Say 200, right? And 350, but what if they want a 275?
Then they get the $200 recognition gift.
Yeah, so they'll round down, basically.
Yeah. So the problem, Bowman, is this: if we give them the one that is up at $350, because of the value of that item, it exceeds the IRS cutoff associated with the level of that donation.
The percentage of the gift. Yeah.
Right.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome. Henry.
Yes, thank you. I put into the chat location the link to the IRS law regarding donations to nonprofits, and I think it'll answer most of the questions that have been asked about that particular subject.
Thank you for that resource. For those of you that want to delve into the ever wordiness and technical descriptions of the IRS, it's there for your review. We've just tried to make it simple by follow the structure that we've provided associated with gift levels at 200, 350, 500, 1,000, and make sure that our gifts are aligned with that and don't try to roll them up. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're a few minutes over time. Thank you very much for your patience this evening. I hope this has answered some of your questions and prepped you for your FOS presentations. And I will simply say, on behalf of all the Scouts that are going to benefit from your efforts in helping the council with its FOS program, on behalf of all the Scouts, thank you for your time and effort and engaging as an FOS presenter. I wish you great luck and success as you go out and engage with their units about investing in the future of Scouting. Thanks for joining us. Y'all have a great evening, and let us know if there's anything we can do to support you in your efforts. Good night, all.
Good night, Jim.
Good night.